Today, I'm going to talk to you about a tragic and shocking story that shook the nation. The story of Dee Dee Blanchard and Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Before we begin, there are three main people that you need to know about. First, Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Gypsy Rose Blanchard is a young woman who became first known to the world in 2015 when she was arrested for her involvement in the murder of her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard. Gypsy was born in Louisiana in 1991, and she grew up believing that she was seriously ill and disabled. Her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, convinced the world that Gypsy suffered from a number of illnesses, including leukemia, asthma, muscular dystrophy, and epilepsy. She subjected her daughter to countless unnecessary medical treatments and surgeries, and she even forced her to use a wheelchair, even though Gypsy was perfectly healthy. As Gypsy got older, she began to realize that her mother's claims about her health were not true. She also began to realize that her mother was controlling every aspect of her life and was making it impossible for her to live a normal life. However, she was unable to escape her mother's abuse until she was in her early 20s. In 2015, Gypsy and her boyfriend, Nicholas Godejohn, were arrested for their involvement in the murder of Dee Dee Blanchard. It was later revealed that Gypsy and Nicholas had planned and carried out the murder as a way to escape from Dee Dee's abuse and manipulation. Since her arrest, Gypsy has been in prison, and she has become a symbol of the issue of abuse and manipulation. Her case has raised important questions about how we can better protect vulnerable people in our society, and how we can help victims of abuse and trauma recover from their experiences. Today, Gypsy is still in prison, but she has expressed a desire to move on with her life and to put her past behind her. She has also taken steps to better herself while in prison, including pursuing an education and participating in counseling and therapy. Gypsy is expected to be released in December of 2023. Next, Dee Dee Blanchard. Dee Dee Blanchard was the mother of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. She was born in Louisiana in 1967, and she spent much of her life raising her daughter, who she is convinced was seriously ill and disabled. Dee Dee was known in her community as a devoted and caring mother who was tirelessly committed to caring for her sick daughter. She claimed that Gypsy suffered from a number of illnesses, again, including leukemia, asthma, muscular dystrophy, and epilepsy. She subjected her daughter to countless unnecessary medical treatments and surgeries, and she even forced her to use a wheelchair, even though Gypsy was perfectly healthy. Dee Dee claims about her daughter's health were widely accepted by the medical community and the public. She received financial support and donations from a number of organizations and individuals who wanted to help Gypsy, and she even appeared on national television to discuss her daughter's illnesses. In 2015, Dee Dee was found dead in her home, and it was later revealed that her daughter Gypsy had participated in her murder. It was discovered that Dee Dee had been controlling every aspect of Gypsy's life and was making it impossible for her to live a normal life. Gypsy and her boyfriend, Nicholas Godejohn, had planned and carried out a murder as a way to escape from Dee Dee's abuse and manipulation. Dee Dee's case has raised important questions about the issue of the Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a mental health disorder in which a caregiver makes up or causes illnesses or injury in a person under their care in order to gain attention and sympathy. Her case has also brought attention to the issue of abuse and manipulation and the importance of supporting victims in these types of crimes. And next, Nicholas Godejohn. Nicholas Godejohn was the boyfriend of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and co-conspirator in the murder of her mother, Dee Dee. He was born in 1990 and grew up in a troubled home with a history of domestic violence and abuse. Nicholas met Gypsy online through a dating site, and the two quickly became close. Gypsy confided in Nicholas about the abuse and manipulation she was experiencing at the hands of her mother, Dee Dee. Nicholas, who had his own history of mental health issues, had been diagnosed with the autism spectrum disorder, became deeply involved in Gypsy's life, and wanted to help her escape from her mother's control. In 2015, Nicholas and Gypsy carry out the plan to murder Dee Dee in order to escape from her abuse and manipulation. Nicholas stabbed Dee Dee to death in her home while Gypsy waited in another room. They fled the scene and were eventually arrested several days later. Nicholas was charged with first-degree murder and was found guilty in November of 2018. He was sentenced life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now more about the case. In June 2015, Dee Dee Blanchard was found dead in her home in Springfield, Missouri. It was later discovered that her daughter, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, and her boyfriend, Nicholas Godejohn, had planned and carried out the murder. The reason behind this heinous act was that Dee Dee had been subjecting her daughter to a lifetime of abuse and manipulation. Dee Dee Blanchard was convinced the world that her daughter was a sickly child who suffered a number of illnesses, including leukemia, asthma, muscular dystrophy, and epilepsy, as I had mentioned earlier. She went as far as shaving Gypsy's head and forcing her to use a wheelchair, even though she was perfectly healthy. There were even times in Gypsy's life where she was forced to use a feeding tube by her mother. Dee Dee's lies extended to every aspect of their lives, including their financial situation, their education, and their relationships. She even lied about Gypsy's age sometimes. But the truth eventually came out, and the world was shocked to learn most of the extent of Dee Dee's abuse and manipulation. Gypsy Rose, who had spent most of her life in captivity, was finally able to speak out and tell her story. She revealed that her mother had forced her to undergo unnecessary and medical treatments and surgeries, had isolated her from the outside world, and even made her believe that she was intellectually disabled. This is a story that raises many important questions about our society. How could something like this happen? How could a mother subject her own child to such abuse and manipulation? How could the world be so easily fooled by Dee Dee's lies? And what can we do to prevent such tragedies from happening again? First and foremost, we need to raise awareness about the signs of abuse and manipulation. We need to teach people to recognize when someone is being controlled and manipulated, and to speak out when they see something that doesn't seem right. We also need to encourage people to question authority, to seek out information for themselves, and not to blindly trust what they are told. Secondly, we need to do more to protect vulnerable people in our society. We need to ensure that there are systems in place to protect children, the elderly, and people with disabilities from abuse and neglect. We need to provide resources and support for people who are victims of abuse and manipulation, and we need to hold abusers accountable for their actions. Finally, we need to address the issue of mental illness. While it is clear that Dee Dee Blanchard's actions were not justified, it is also clear that she suffered from a serious mental illness. We need to ensure that people who suffer from mental illnesses are able to access the treatment and support they need to manage their condition and live a healthy, fulfilling life. Should they release her? Gypsy is a victim of abuse. However, can her actions be justified? Should she be released? Or should she stay locked up, like her devoted partner, Nick? While I'm not condoning the murder of Dee Dee Blanchard, I believe that Gypsy's actions were a result of a lifetime of abuse and manipulation. Gypsy was not in her right mind when she participated in the murder, and it is clear that she was a victim of her mother's abuse for her entire life. Furthermore, Gypsy has shown remorse for her actions and has expressed a desire to move on with her life. She has also taken steps to better herself while in prison, including pursuing an education and participating in counseling therapy. It is also important to note that Gypsy's case has shown a light on the importance of abuse and manipulation and has led to increased awareness and support for victims of these types of crimes. By releasing Gypsy, we can send a message that we are committed to supporting victims of abuse and helping them recover from their trauma. In conclusion, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is a tragic figure who has been the victim of abuse and manipulation for her entire life. While her involvement in the murder of her mother was wrong, it is clear that she was not in her right mind when participating in the crime. Her case, as severe as it is a reminder of the importance of protecting vulnerable people in our society and providing support and resources for victims of abuse and trauma. Gypsy Rose Blanchard deserves to be released from prison. While she was involved in a terrible crime, she is also the victim of abuse that manipulated her entire life. By releasing her, we can send a message that we are committed to supporting the victims of abuse and helping them recover from their trauma. The story of Dee Dee Blanchard and Gypsy Rose Blanchard is a tragedy that should have never happened, but we can learn from the story, and we can work to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. Thank you.